Hi, everyone. I'm Carol Fitzgerald from Reading Group Guides, a website from the Book Report Network, and I am the host of the Book Reporter Talks to video podcast series. Welcome to our Bookaccino Live book group event, where our guest this evening is Ashley Elston, and we're going to be discussing her number one New York Times bestseller, First Lie Wins. Oh, yes, First Lie Wins. I know that when this was first published last year, it was named a Reese's Book Club selection for January. It was a number one New York Times bestseller. It was a USA Today bestseller, a Book of the Month Club main selection, and also a nominee for the Book of the Year, a Geordie's inaugural selection, an Indie Next selection. Can I go on and on? And a library read selection. So lots and lots of pre-pub and after-pub praise for this book. Our book reporter reviewer, Ray Palin, had this to say about it. First Lie Wins is unpredictable in every sense of the word and wraps everything up with a completely satisfying ending that will reward all readers who follow along with Evie on her journey. I had the pleasure of reading this book last year, and I picked it as one of my 40 Book Reporter Bets On selections last year. And it's one of those books that I still look back on and say, you know what, that was one of my favorite of the year. So let's talk about the format for tonight. And let's start by reminding everybody that we're assuming that you've read the book. We will be talking spoilers. This is the kind of book club where you don't just drink wine, you actually talk about the book and all about it. I'm going to begin with a discussion with Ashley, where I'm going to skate around some questions that some of our readers are going to be asking. And then one of our readers is going to join us live to talk about First Lie Wins. And then I'm going to be asking a couple of questions for camera shy people. And then we're going to go to questions from the audience. So if you've got a question for Ashley that you want to ask, drop it into the Q&A. Please don't drop it in the chat, drop it in the Q&A. And we will get to as many of those questions as possible later on in the evening. With that housekeeping behind us, let's welcome Ashley to the stage. So Ashley, cameras, mic, here you are.
Hi.
So great to see you again. And I think you need to tell everybody where you are right now because she's not at home at her desk every.
I'm not. I'm in California. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in, I think, Studio City is where we are right now. So, had a fun day today filming some content with the Reese Book Club and Apple Books collab that we're doing, where I get to talk about some of my favorite thrillers and share those with some Apple Book listeners, audiobook listeners. And so, super excited. It was a fun day. As I told Carol, I was like, I could have gotten stuck in the Uber to do this, or I could find a nice little spot to have maybe a little dinner. And so obviously I've picked a nice spot.
I hope you've got a nice spot with wine. You better have wine in your hand,
Yeah,
yeah?
I mean, you can't come to California without just a little bit. So
You can't
yes,
do that. You can't do that.
yes.
So she's coming to us from California instead of Louisiana. You know, she's just become this jet set girl over the last year. All the places she's been, all the fun things. I mean, you were at Reese's what was it? The specials, Reese's
Her Shine Away event,
Runaway
yes, in
event.
October.
If
Super fun.
if you're on social media, you want to be following Ashley just to see what she's up to. She's going on the road again next week. So it's
Yes.
like, more and more fun of like where she is and what she's up to. So let's start back at the beginning. Can you share where you came up with the idea for First Lie Wins?
I was a photographer by trade for like 10 years before I started writing. And so everything is very visual for me when I start. And I had that scene in my head. I had that opening scene. I had the dinner party. I could see that table. I could see the candles lit, down the center. I saw the people sitting around the table. And then, so I started writing that scene. Then their conversation kind of built. What would they talk about? And, in the South, maybe some of the ladies were a bit catty to the newcomer at the table. And so, wrote that scene and I was not really sure where it was going from there, but I knew I loved it and I knew it felt different. I had written YA before, and so this would be a departure for me into adult. And so I don't know, I just kept thinking, well, what would she do next? And I would write that scene. And then what would she do next? And I did that, for a bit. And then I was like, okay, this actually might be a story, but I need to sort of wrap my head around what am I trying to say? What is the story I'm trying to tell? And that's when I was like, okay, let's think this through. So I can't say I came out of the gate with it. It kind of grew a little bit more organically, I guess is the best way to put it.
So you were a photographer, specifically a wedding photographer. And when we
Yes.
talked last year, that taught you a lot. And
Hmm.
let's go through because you think of the wedding photographer, it's the person doing this, but let's talk about what you actually were doing and what you realized you were doing as that photographer.
Hmm. So what's funny about photography is, especially wedding photography, is my job was to follow the bride around for the whole day and make sure I got the important shots. And so I am doing nothing but scanning the room. What's her mom doing? What's her dad doing? Is the bride doing something I need to photograph? What are those crazy groomsmen doing? Are they busting a move on the dance floor? Do I need to capture that? And so with that comes watching and, seeing people moving away. Like I can tell something's fixing to happen over here. They're all, going towards the cake table. What are they wearing? And then, but also the photography part, I'm looking at the background. I mean, is a flower arrangement going to stick out of the back of her head? Is her dress straight? Is her veil straight? And so you just, you take in the whole scene, and the wedding album is a story. You're starting at the beginning of the day. She's getting dressed. She's, getting ready to go. You want to make sure the ceremony has, a lot of coverage. That's a big part. We have to have
Mhm.
that in the middle. We end with the going away. So it tells its own story, just like a book does. And so I would not have thought that it would have been the perfect sort of training to
Mhm.
writing, but it actually really works well. Hand in hand, those two things.
Yeah, of what you're doing. It's really funny, the little details on a wedding as well, like the little small things that are going to be the things that people remember. And you think
Mm-hmm.
you remember it so well that day. And let me tell you, our 40th is coming up. I don't remember who was there. I mean, we have to look at the
Same.
pictures.
I
And I
know,
wish I
same.
had everybody document. Was Uncle so and so there? I really
Mhm.
wish I had a table picture from every table because I don't really
Right.
remember, At that time, you
I
think you
know.
do.
You think you'll never
Let's
forget, but you do. Hmm.
so let's talk about Evie, who's got this moral code to her. She's not just a con, she's got this heart and soul. So tell us how you came up with her.
I mean, I love to read about a character that, I mean, it's kind of bad, but you still like her, right? And there's a line she won't cross. Maybe her line's not where my line would be, but she still won't cross it. And you don't want to be that person in real life, but it sure is fun to write about her, you know?
Yeah. It's like I would like to hang out with her, but not be her. There's
Right. Like we'll have a drink and then I'm gonna let you go your way and I'm gonna go on home, that kind of thing.
and now Mr. Smith as a character. How was
Hmm.
that to develop this clandestine character? Somebody who's
Well,
off the line.
that was a journey. So he had like there were like three different, and there were seven different endings I wrote of that book, but three of those were who Mr. Smith was. And at first, you just found out his name. I was like, well, that is very anticlimactic, right? Is who cares if his name is John Brown? I mean, really. And so then I was like, okay, no, he's got to be somebody we've met before. And so then I had him at one point. He was the neighbor of Ryan's neighbor, and then I was like, he's too smart for that. He would not put himself that close to Ryan. He would not put himself that close to Evie. And so then I changed it, and then it just, I mean, we're spoiling, right? I mean, we're totally spoiling. So
Right, totally
I
spoiling, totally
totally
spoiling.
spoiling. And I was like, it has to be George. I mean, it just has to be George. Well, then that meant going back and really beefing George up as a character because he wasn't quite in there as much before he became Mr. Smith. So, every change is sort of an avalanche of other changes that have to happen. And that one, it's no different.
So, okay, you're doing all these characters, you're all in your head, and then you go make dinner. You know?
I probably like ordered pizza, or I probably told my husband to like pick up, Mexican to go. I don't know. There was some cooking in there, maybe, but yeah.
Are the characters like in your head the whole time? Like, okay, you stop writing, you walk away
Hmm.
from your laptop, walk away from your
Hmm.
desktop. You're still playing the game in your head of what's
It
going
kind
on.
of runs like in the background, like kind of, I'm not actively thinking about it, but if I see something on TV or if I have a situation where I think, oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. I actually kind of like could use something, and then all of a sudden, it's to the forefront. So I do feel like when I'm actively writing, it is in the background. It is like background noise for me.
Mhm.
And then when I'm done, they're gone. I mean, gone. And I've spent the last year promoting First Law Win, so I've had to keep it pretty active in my mind to talk about it. But I've been writing my next book, so I'll get a question about First Law Wins that is very detail oriented, and I have to take a minute and be like, hold on, what part is that? Like it's sort of gone. Like I don't have the bandwidth to hold all the details for both, right? And so I have to sort of refresh my memory, which is so crazy. And then also I have to remind myself, what version did I end up with? They're asking me this, but then I might remember part that came from a version that doesn't exist anymore. And so, the brain's a funny thing. Not always easy to deal with, but yeah.
I could see you on the plane going out there. Let me read my book and see exactly
Right.
what I wrote.
Like, what are you going to ask me? Somebody asked me something so specific, and I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And they're like, you wrote it. I was like, oh, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's like, oh, that's gone. There's only
Either
so
that
much
or
space.
you said that sounds like a really good idea.
And I'm like, wow, that was pretty smart of me to do that. Yeah.
I was doing that and then I moved it over here, just so you know. Like that's,
Yes. Right. Yeah. It's
totally
fun though.
forgot, totally forgot. Well, Debbie is going to join us. She's one of our longtime Bookaccino Live attendees. She's joining us from Myrtle Beach, where the snow has melted.
Oh,
There's a
wow.
lot
No,
of
so
snow.
crazy. That's so crazy.
Yeah, she escapes from Syracuse to Myrtle Beach and it snows.
Oh,
So,
wow.
what can I say? So, Debbie, take it away, you and Ashley.
Yes, I'm very happy that Myrtle Beach is back to normal.
I know. Hi, Debbie.
Because snow and palm trees just don't work
They do
together.
not. They do not. They do not.
Um, I loved your book. It
Thank
kept
you.
me interested, and yet I every once in a while I go, oh, wait a minute. I think I missed something. I need to go back and figure out what's going on.
Oh,
But
I love that.
how did you keep track of all the characters and their lies and who told what lie? I felt like I needed a spreadsheet that
Well,
keep track of
I,
everything.
I love a roll of brown paper. I love some sticky notes. I love some Sharpies. I feel like, both of those companies could sponsor me at this point, but I have to map it out visually, and I will take a huge piece, 7, 8 foot roll of brown paper and tape it to the wall. And every chapter gets a sticky note. And it's different colors if it's in the past or if it's in the present. And then I'll sum up each chapter on that sticky note. And then when I have a question that comes in, like, can I talk about this? Like, has Devin been introduced? Well, Devin's been introduced at this chapter. So then I know everything before that. Don't really mention Devin because the reader hasn't met him yet. And then when I say things like, well, they drove from here to here and they did it in 7 hours. Is that possible? I might have to go Google that and see if that's realistic to say they traveled from, in that amount of time. Or my editor had an issue with this part, so I need to put a lot of thought back into, does this work? And it's like a cheat sheet almost. It's something I can see the whole book in one view. And if I'm really heavy with the sticky notes in one area, then that's telling me that area needs some work because there's too many questions and too many issues around. If I have a big old part that's pretty clean, well, that's probably pretty good. And so that's kind of how I treat it.
I love your definition of the first lie. Um, and I thought a lot about that, but what led you to that concept?
Titles are so hard, and they say, don't judge a book by the cover, and you can kind of say the same thing about the title, but everybody does. I mean, everybody looks at a cover and loves it or hates it, or title it works or it doesn't. And so, I don't think sometimes the title comes very easily and sometimes it doesn't. And I was at the point where I was knee deep enough in this book, but I was like, I really think this is the next book, but really let me think of a title, let me think of, what direction I'm going in. And so when I get into those moments, I start Googling things like lies, liars, looking for, sayings or quotes or something that might sort of bring some inspiration. And I came across this article that was talking about the show that I have not seen called Catherine the Great. And in the show, they were talking about poor Catherine was really dogged by this lie for her the rest of her life. And I will let you Google it because it is not nice to poor Catherine, but it was so far-fetched and so untrue, but people just believed it because someone said it. They believed them, and they could not come back from it.
Mhm.
And in the show, they say something along the lines of, well, that first lie got out and you couldn't pull it back in. And so that first lie won. And I was like, that's it, right? That's it exactly. So you talk about a con man, somebody that their whole thing depends on, can I make people believe what I'm saying is true? Right? Is my megaphone big enough? Am I confident enough in the way I say it? And then people will, work hard to make sure that they know that it is true and not try to disclaim that it's not. And so kind of the whole thought about the book. And so that's why I was like, yeah, it's kind of the perfect title for that book.
Yeah, for sure. I have to admit that after reading your book, I was not sure who told the first lie. Um, with Luca, Evie, she seemed to tell the first lie every time she took on a new role.
Right.
So arguably, she told the first lie multiple times. However, Mr. Smith, George, seemed to manipulate several of the characters in the story, so it could have been him. When you wrote the
Right.
book, who did you intend to be the character who told the first lie?
I treat it like every time Evie had to go into a new identity, when she had to say, "This is who I am. This is why I'm here," even though it was a complete and total fabrication to her, that was the lie because she had to sell herself. And if they did not believe she was who she said she was, the rest of it would not matter. So
Mhm.
while they're all sort of lying, from the beginning, like, that was the big one. Because if they didn't believe she was who she said she was going to be, they wouldn't believe anything else from her.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this book. I really
Well,
enjoyed
thank
it.
you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
I can't wait to see what you write next because just from
Oh,
talking to you
talk about a
for
journey
the
too.
for the last few minutes, it's like you have as I can saw all the energy in the characters of your book, and I see sort of the same energy in you.
Oh, well, thank you. That's so sweet. I really appreciate that.
So congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Debbie.
Debbie, thanks again for joining us. Always appreciate having you on.
Thanks, Carol.
A reader named Lori wrote and said, "We read the book for book club and discussed it yesterday." And that's what I love, that people are discussing this in book club. We wondered
Yes.
what happened to Mr. Smith when Evie takes over his business.
Okay. I mean, I kind of assume he's dead, right? I'm assuming they took him out into the behind the woodshed, right? And he's done. I leave the ending a little bit open for interpretation.
Mhm.
I like to tie a lot of the things up, but I don't want to tie everything up because I feel like for the reader, it's kind of fun to sort of imagine what they think happened to him. So, um, I think it's up to anybody's perspective. I will tell you mine is I think he's probably dead.
Yeah, we could see that. Absolutely, that could be seeing that.
Yes.
Lori, I think you should tell your book club that we think that's what happened, you know?
Yeah.
We flip back to Evie and her first con. And did you write all the first cons first and then move to, or like, okay, you're talking about your sticky notes. Were they different
Yes,
colors or were they
they
all
were.
yellow? The
No,
blue?
they were present day was one color, the flashbacks were different so that I could see, did I have two and then two of this color, one of this color? Did I have a pattern? Was I too heavy on one side?
And that was like playing around. And you were skipping around then with the time frames when you wrote. You weren't writing in order.
Well, so I didn't, when I first set out, I did not anticipate that I would have the flashbacks. Just didn't come to me at that point.
Mhm.
And so when you get into writing, if you feel like you're having to all the time, like having to explain why she did this, or let me tell you about this, let me tell you about this. Well, then I'm like, well, I should be able to show some of this because that's just more interesting. So I thought, well, let me write just one flashback scene. How do I like it? How does it feel? Does it feel like it would fit in with the book? So I wrote the first one, which was her, very, very young girl, still in high school. Her mother was still alive. She went to the party and stole the jewelry. And I loved it. And I was like, oh no, yeah, we have to have those because I think they add so much because I'm not trying to tell you how she got her start. I can actually show you through these past jobs. Then it was like, well, how many do I need? Well, I don't know. Let's see. And so as I went along where I wanted something to really like mean something. So you get to the part where you're in Oxford and you want to go see that coach. I thought, well, I need to show why the coach is important, right? So let me write that flashback scene. I need to show why the governor is important. Well, let me show that flashback. So I feel like you have to have a really strong purpose for a flashback scene.
Mhm.
I don't like a gratuitous, like, let me just throw something back and let's see how it goes. Like, it's got to work, it's got to do its job. And for me, it had to do double duty. I needed it to have a purpose in the time you were reading it. So you take the coach in Oxford. That's why we were going to Oxford. That's why we were finding the coach. But the second part of that was at the end for the football player who ended up being an alibi. It's the same flashback had two jobs. And so to me, if I could make two jobs come out of it, then it worked.
Wow. Wow. That is a lot of maneuvering around, thinking around. Okay, so you put it together. You do, let's say, your first draft. Is that
Hmm.
the point where you just sit down and take it all away and just sit and read and make notes? Or how are you editing as you go? Are you,
Well, for me, so like the first draft is very fluid, and I'm like, I don't know what we're doing, but let's throw this in, and sometimes that works, and sometimes you keep it, sometimes you throw it away, sometimes you get to the end, and you're like, well, I like the end, but maybe the journey is a bit flawed, and so I know I'm gonna have to go back. But usually at that point, that is when I have to I step away from it.
Mhm,
I need a break because I would have just been churning that story over and over and over, and it's very easy to think it's so straight in my own brain, like it makes so much sense, but does it really get to the page that way?
mhm,
And so this is usually when I have a critique partner come in and read cold. They have no idea what they're reading. How does that come across? Is it making sense? Is it working the way I think it's going to work? And so while they're reading and getting me notes, I'm taking a break from it.
mhm,
And then when I come back to it a little fresher, notes from somebody I trust, then I'm like, okay, well, this was great. They love this part. This they were super confused, right?
mhm,
Well, if you're confused, then I didn't do my job. And that's when I start going in and deciding, is this part worth fixing or does this part need to change completely?
mhm,
Because it's not always about fixing what was there. Sometimes you just need to do something different.
mhm. Character needs to change, the
Or the
atmosphere needs to
plot,
change,
you
something.
know, I mean,
Yeah,
something needs to change.
right.
And, and then when I get into the part where I'm with like the editor, sometimes, they'll say, this part's not working, you should do this. And sometimes their suggestions work, and sometimes their suggestions don't because they didn't understand what I was trying to do. And they're
Mhm,
trying to fix something that's not right. And so I have to recognize, do I like their suggestion or do I just take their suggestion as notice that this part's not working because they wouldn't have suggested it this way if it was working the way I wanted it to.
mhm. So, one of my author friends, Lynn Barkley, said that getting notes back from your editor is like getting your test back from the doctor. Am I going to live or die? And
Hmm.
when those come in, is it this moment of, okay, let me see what they're going to say about my book?
I have a moment where I start reading that edit letter and I'll get about halfway through and I'm like, I'm not reading that. I'm not reading that. It's a little bit like, I did all this and this is what you have to say to me, which is ridiculous, right? And I have to put it down and then I come back to it and I start going, okay, well, they're right. Okay, they're right. They're right. But maybe they're not right in their suggestion of how to fix it, but they're right in that there's a problem. And so, I mean, it's like I don't know, the 7 cycle grief cycle. I don't know what it is to be like, this was great. No, it's not. I have to fix it. So it's because it's hard to it's impossible for it not to feel a little bit like, I mean, somebody's judging you. They're judging your work. They're judging your ideas. And you have to just have that thick skin and be like, we all want this book to be the best.
Right,
So
right. And
take that
sometimes it's just
criticism.
something like you said, you're not seeing because it's not
Right.
working here because it didn't work there. And it's like
Right.
the joke, you can't get the punchline because you didn't get the joke right.
Right. Well, and exactly. So the book I'm working on right now, I sent the first draft in and they start telling me notes on the second half. And I was like, can we have a Zoom and talk about this as we start talking? And I was like, did you get this twist in the middle? And I could tell immediately that they did not. And I was like, oh, okay. Because if you didn't get that, I get why the whole rest of the book did not work. I mean, there's no way it would have worked if this twist did not land the way I wanted it to.
Mhm.
So the problem is way back here because that's not even what this is. And so I was like, okay, I've got to go back to the drawing board. And that's what I had to do. And to me, in my mind, I was like, this is going to be a great plot device that I'm doing. Well, it's not great if nobody gets it. Right. So, a lot of time it's just really like, it's a problem, but why? Why is
Yeah,
it a problem?
you can't have it on the back of the book. Let me tell you what I did on page 134. In
I
case you
know,
missed
right?
it, let me
In
tell you what's
case you
there.
missed it. 100%. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump in with another question, but we're getting ready for Tom Donadio, editorial director, to start fielding some questions. Anybody, if you're live and you have a question, if you could drop it down in the Q&A, it'd be great. And we're going to try to get to as many of them as we can. Okay, well, Lara from Plainview, New York says, do you write with a computer, pen, paper, combination of both? Sounds like it's a little bit of combination if you're up on the wall with the brown paper.
Right. So the brown paper in the notes is just scrabbled notes. Any real writing is always on a computer. I don't write anything significant by hand. So I would say it's almost all computer. I would say the brown paper and sticky notes is just notes. It's just notes. It's not writing.
And do you ever make notes on the fly when you're out? Like, oh wait, that sounds like because you're
Yes,
food
but I
shopping.
go to
Like,
my but I go to my notes app and I still type it in.
mhm.
Or I mean, I might scribble something on a piece of paper, but I'm losing that piece of paper and it's going to do me no good when I can't find it. So I really try hard to go. I mean, I have a note in my phone right now that's just called Anatomy of an Alibi because that's what my new book is. And I just keep adding things and it's so long, but every time I have a thought, I put it in there and it's in that one single note, but it syncs to my laptop and it syncs to my desktop. And so anywhere I am, I can pull that note back up and then I can go back and look at every random thought I had from the beginning.
Right.
So
And it'll also
talk
be
about a
pick up
journey.
radishes in the
Yes.
middle.
Yes. Yes. We need milk.
Yeah.
Also, he's the killer. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes,
Milk keeps
fun.
it going.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because if you write on paper, my handwriting is so bad that they used to ask my kids what kind of doctor I was. I mean, that's how bad
I
my
know.
notes used to come.
Mine is too. And then you feel like you're doing it in like shorthand almost. And then you see it a couple hours later, like, what I mean, what was that? I don't even know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So it's
I have a note stuck on my desk. I have no idea what it means. It says
yeah.
newsletter something, but I don't know what I did. I don't know
Right,
why.
right. Those are good times.
I don't know why. It's not like it's not that good thing at all, you know? So you're also in a writing group with a couple of people. What
Hmm.
does that help? You critique them, they critique you. How does it work? Is it like a formal kind of a thing that you do, or I need you now?
It started out very formal because we didn't know each other. So it's Megan Miranda and El Cosimano and I. We at the time we were all writing YAs back in like 2012. We all had the same agent. None of us had a critique partner. Every one of us needed a critique partner. She set us up. And so I think my first email was, "Hello. My name is Ashley Elston. I am so happy to be in this critique group with you." I mean, it was super formal. And so, would you be okay to read a few pages? I am happy to read a few pages for you. And so we finally met for the first time, maybe a year or so later. We all went to um, Y'all Fest in Charleston.
Right.
And I mean, we went from like, a couple of emails to like, let's all share a room and save some money. And, my husband was like, wait, do you know these women? I was like, no, but I think it's going to be fine. I think it'll be fine. So we go and we meet, we have a great time. And now we're like, have a text thread. And it's just like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this dead body. I mean, we are so like, you know, far from where we started. We get together a couple times a year. It's so helpful to have somebody like-minded with the plotting and all of those things, and what the readers think and how to deal with this, to have them not only read your work but how to deal with the other stuff that comes up, the business stuff that comes up,
Right.
or the do I go do this festival? Have you all ever been to this festival? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the money?
Right.
It's just, it's it's kind of been invaluable to me, honestly.
And where can we go together? Because that would make it even more fun.
Yes,
And
yes.
and that first meeting, I'm sure it had some wine. I'm sure there was some
I'm
wine there,
sure, I'm quite sure there probably was a little bit.
at
Yes.
least a little bit of wine.
Yes.
So, Tom, voice of God, Tom Donadio, do you have any editorial questions for us?
Yes, we do have a few questions here. First, Lori said that her question was already answered, but she wanted to let you know that she and her book club absolutely loved your book. So just wanted to
Oh,
get that out there
well,
before
thank you.
we
I
start.
love hearing that. Thank you.
Um, so we have a question from Pat. What time frame are we talking from the first draft through the edits to the final product?
Typically for me, if I'm to the point where I have like pitched a book and sold it to my editor, then by the time that from that moment to publication, I am like 2 years. Now, everybody's different. I have friends. In fact, Megan is like a book a year. And, she still takes, maybe 18 months, but she's got her schedule to where, one's coming in, one's going out. And I'm not like that. I can only really work on one book at a time. So, I'm 2 years between books, probably.
Mhm.
There's a lot of steps, way more steps than I ever thought before I started.
Yeah, it's not just
A
writing and
lot.
turning it in. No,
It's not. Mm-mm,
no. And it's
mm-mm.
that final, what's the final copy edit? And like, this is the only time you
Well,
can make
but it,
changes.
yes, well, but then that usually happens so far in advance because you want the marketing and you want the publicity and you want the time to build, the, all the buzz for it. So the book has to be finished for other people to start reading to build that buzz before the publication date.
Mhm.
So it's a machine.
And with Reese, how far in advance did you hear that you were Reese selection?
3 months. It was tight, but that was good because that was a big secret. And I'm not good at those. So I don't know that I would have lasted much longer if I had to keep that secret that long.
All the pieces, all the pieces.
Yes.
Now, in keeping with the writing process, we actually both Diana and GJ asks the same thing. What is the biggest difference besides perhaps content moving from writing YA to writing primarily for adults?
Um, you know, content obviously is a big part of it, but it's really perspective. So YA was, from the perspective of that teen and, the things that held them back. They weren't a legal adult. They couldn't live on their own typically. They still had parents to answer to mostly. And so, that came with its own set of challenges for that character. Well, those things are not in place for the adult, right? You're kind of on your own. But it was also looking at it from that different world view, where the teen's biggest problem, is going to be very age related. It's the same for the adults. It's just very different. How they can move around in the world is much different. The things that would affect them would be much different. So it was kind of a big jump, but it wasn't. I don't know if that doesn't make sense, but it was just thinking about it through the lens of that adult rather than that lens of that teen.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
And what the teen might have already experienced. And as an adult, you've
Right.
experienced a lot more.
Right. hmm Yeah, it's just looking at things differently.
It's seeing that not going to the prom really wasn't that big a deal.
Right, right. Yeah.
Dina wants to know, was it ever a question if Evie and Ryan get back together at the end?
Oh yeah, for a while I thought Ryan was going to be the killer. So obviously they wouldn't have been ended up together at the end. But then I was like, no, I really like him, and I like a little bit of the romance in the book. So I was like, I mean, it was just a hot minute that he was going to be the bad guy. But for that hot minute, if he was a bad guy, probably no. But then I'm a sucker for a good ending like that. So I had to change it back, and he was going to be there at the end.
You get to stay in. I like you.
Well, you're nice. Be like, you're kind of bad too, but that's okay.
Gail asks, where in your soul do you go to write characters' personal anxiety?
Where I
Where
don't
in
know
your
if I've ever
soul do
been
you
at.
go?
Where in my soul do I go to write that? I don't know. Um, I
Tough to
don't
answer
know.
specifically, I know.
I don't. I don't. I don't know. I mean, I don't. None of this has happened to me, so it's not like I'm drawing from experience. But I guess I'm very empathetic. Maybe I could just assume what that feels like. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I guess somewhere down deep. I don't know.
Now I know you talked about being a photographer before becoming a writer. Anna asks, you haven't always been a writer. What was your previous life before you got famous, and are you still involved with it, or has this book become your full-time gig now? So are you still
Okay.
involved in photography?
No, photography, I was done with that before I even started writing. I had
Mhm.
3 young kids at home, and it was a great business at the beginning. My husband and I had a landscape company, and I did the book work for that, but I could do that at home. But the photography was a sort of a hobby and a passion that I got to monetize, basically. And most of that work was done on the weekends when he was home with the kids. So it was great for us in the beginning. But then as my kids started growing and they started playing sports and having birthday parties, and you book a wedding a year in advance and you don't know there's a soccer game on that Saturday, and then you're starting to miss things. And so I kind of got to where I was like, I think I want to break from the photography. We still had the landscape company, so I was still doing that during the week while they were at school. But I stopped the photography pretty cold turkey. Like we were done before I started writing. And so I still did the bookkeeping for the landscape business up until we sold it about 2019, which was good because it's kind of before all of the stuff with this book, because I don't know really how I would have juggled both right now. So really since probably about 2020, it's just been mom, wife, and author.
Mhm. Yeah, but you also were talking about, I remember us talking about the weddings also got longer. The wedding
Yes.
started now at 5 a.m. and it
Oh,
went to
my
1
first
a.m.
Right. My first weddings, when I started photographing weddings, was like, I don't know, 2000, 1999, 2000. And you'd show up about an hour and a half before the wedding, and you'd take all the little group shots then, and you do the wedding, and that reception lasted about 2, 3 hours. Well, by the time I finished, it was meet at the hairdressers and get that done, and then go to the dressing, and then go to this, and then go to, and it turned into like an 11-hour day
Right.
because they just kept adding things, and I was like, oh, I'm done. I'm done. We're done. So it did.
Oh,
And I went from film, like it was all film,
wow.
introduction of digital to all digital, and I was like, okay, I'm really done. I'm too old. I'm done.
Don't make a robe with my name on it. No more me. No
Right,
more me.
right, right, right.
Wow, that definitely sounds like such a demanding job to be a photographer, to have to go through a wedding photographer and to go through an entire day like that.
Well, but it was
That's
fun
crazy.
though because everybody's happy to be there, and it's
Hmm.
everybody's so excited for the couple, and you're at a party and you're listening to the band and there's cake. So I mean, it was work,
Okay.
but not most of the work came in when it switched to digital, and everybody wanted their pictures photoshopped. Can you take this little thing out of every single picture? That's when I was like, oh no, I didn't sign up for all that. That was where the real work, and that's not fun work.
Mhm.
I used to just ship those camera rolls off. It came back. I stuck it in a little album with some numbers. They picked the ones they wanted. We were done. But digital, yeah, it really changed a lot of things.
Hmm.
So now we have a few people asking about a movie adaptation, and Laura
Mhm.
asks, if your book becomes a movie, who would you cast?
This is a terrible question for me because I don't watch enough TV to know like who out there. Like I think, Ryan, who's, in the book like 30, I'd be like, well, that Tom Cruise sure is cute. Well, yeah, he's like 72 or whatever he is. So like I'm like the worst person to ask because like who's a hot, cute, up and coming actor around 30? I don't know. And then I also think I really don't want to think too hard about that because what if I just get my heart and soul set on, some actor, and the likelihood of him being the person is very, very, very slim. And then I'm just disappointed. So I leave those to people, better suited to make those decisions than me.
So right now, you do know that's being adapted for Hulu. This is the thing that you do know, right?
Yes.
And that's about it. What
That's about
can
it.
be
It's very
announced.
vague. It's so vague. I have read drafts of the pilot, and I am very happy. I think it is very true to the book. But elevated in a way for television that it should be. I could not be happier with the producers attached. Krista Vernoff is the writer. She was the showrunner and writer for Grey's Anatomy for a decade. So, I mean, how lucky am I to get that kind of talent on board? We have Octavia Spencer's production company, and she has become a friend. I mean, she has done so many events with me
Yeah.
because her philosophy is the better the book does, the better chances the TV show happens and is successful. And so she and I probably have done, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 events together so far. And it's been amazing. They've been amazing. And so I feel like that book is in the right hands, and it does feel long, it feels slow, but I feel like it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah. Somebody saying about your personality is phenomenal, and I agree. I mean,
Oh,
when I talk to you and we'll have these conversations, it's always like Wonderland. It's not like you just sit there and say, "This is me. This is what's going
well,
on." You're
that's
like,
very
"I am
sweet.
going with Octavia on the road. I cannot believe this is me." When you did the Shine event, you, Megan, and you were just taking these pictures, and it was sort of like this, like if you follow her on social media, guys, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like this is just the must fun moment of what's going on in my life. But there's nothing like today, Octavia, tomorrow, just go ahead and
Oh, oh no, I'm in a picture. My hair's all crazy, and I'm smiling like I, never smiled in my life, and I'm looking like, I just, won the lottery, which I feel like I have. So, and they're just all poised and sitting there all cute, professional, and I'm like cheesing for the camera. It's super fun.
don't
It's super
change.
fun.
Please don't change because it's the best.
Thank you. I'm too old for that, I guess.
It's the
Hopefully,
best. I just have to share one personal thing, Tom, before you get in. She has this hysterical video that's up on, I guess it's on Instagram.
it's on
Okay.
my Instagram.
She's got three boys. Okay, I have two, so I know exactly what these adventures are like. And they're on vacation. Where were you? In Switzerland?
We were in Switzerland and those fools talked me into going canyoning. Like a dummy, I said, okay. Well, no, what they did is like, unless you think you're too old to do it. And of course, I was like, we throw my sword down and yes, I'm going with you. And it was the worst experience of my life.
It was so funny watching this. And she actually has captions like, "This is where it's not fun. If I could get out of it now, I
This
would
is where
do
I'm
this."
about to die. Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible.
This is the
Horrible.
worst. I thought it was bad before. Like, just this. And she's going to do a newsletter soon. In fact, people go to her website and sign up for a newsletter because
Yeah.
it'll have about the tour. It'll have like any information we can share, but it's also going to, I want to put that video, a link to that video, because it just makes me laugh every time I look at it. It's like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
That
know
was
that
my
moment of,
kids were like, you were so pissed the whole time. I was like, yes, I was pissed because it was miserable. Like it was a horrible that we paid a fortune for it and we all almost died. It was yeah.
Oh, the things you do for your children.
Yes, I let
Crazy.
those boys shame me into stuff all the time like that. So
So going back to your previous life, Mary wants to know, was there something in your background that led you to writing? It seems like a random shift from bookkeeper and photographer to writer.
I agree. I'm also a pesticide applicator. We had to get for the landscape company. I'm licensed to buy like the good chemicals for your yard. I think I was just a lifelong reader and I love to read. I will choose reading over watching TV. And so I love to fall into a good book. And I think if anything sort of put me on the path to writing, it was being a reader.
Mhm,
And the photography is storytelling. It's just in a different medium. So I
mhm.
think the reading and the photography hobbies um, converge to writing.
And it was before the time of Instagram. It was before the time of
Hmm.
social media when you were
Hmm.
doing that. And even story writing or now is
Hmm.
different, just
It
based
is.
on where you can have experiences. And it's so many times people tell me that they set books way back before there was
Hmm.
any kind of communication you could get to really easily. Either that or it's going to be, we'll just pick up the cell phone and call. I mean, oh, you
Right.
lost the phone?
Right.
Much harder as soon
Much
as you
harder.
have all those ways to communicate with each other or find each other.
Hmm. For sure. For sure.
And ring cameras have destroyed it for most
They
thriller
have.
writers because
It had
anything to be
look,
found.
because you have to work around it. You have to work around. Well, they came in the house, but the ring camera wasn't working. I mean, like you have to either it becomes a part of it. You have to work around it. It's a thing. It is.
I mean, I was left in New York when we're watching the news at night and they say there was this shooting and here's a picture of the guy and you see like somebody with a mask and you see this much. Next night we arrested him. Like, whoa.
I know. It makes it hard. It does make it hard.
You knew the jacket, you know? Okay, Tom, I'm taking your time. Tell me, do you have another
No,
question
that's
for
okay.
us?
Um, Dina wants to know, is there anything from your personal life that in some form made its way into First Lie Wins?
I mean, I think that small town, in the book is very reminiscent of the town I live in. I think, I always joke and say I am not from where, we live in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm not from there, but I moved there when I was 19. But, I'll forever be not from Shreveport, even though I've lived there, twice as long as I lived anywhere else. And it is, kind of that small town, thing that happens. But the fun stuff too, I think what I loved about writing this book is showcasing things in the South that, the reason this book happened the way it does is because of where it happened, in those towns with that culture and with, those personalities. Like it wouldn't have happened anywhere else the same way. And so that comes from personal experiences. My kids went to Ole Miss. We've spent many a weekend there. It is a quaint and beautiful little town. And I was like, love to put this in a book someday. SEC football is a huge part of the South and it's a big deal. And, a coach being fired and being rehired, by a competing school would be a big deal. So those parts probably are the flavor of things from my real life that you probably see in the book.
Mhm.
Interesting. Um, GJ says, I really like this book and Evie, but at the same time, it bothered me that I was cheering for her when she was a liar and a criminal. You mentioned
Good.
earlier, you mentioned earlier that there was um, a line she wouldn't cross. How did you find that line? Did you struggle with her morality?
Well, Amy was came to me kind of pretty clear, and obviously she's a criminal, and I honestly like the fact that she could recognize that she was really good at it and was unapologetic, and that's sort of how I thought this is how Evie's going to be. Good at it. I'm not apologizing for it, but I won't punch down. So, right. So when you're talking about like the football player, she wanted to pull him aside and say, look, this is how you're going to work this system and this is how you're going to, move forward. And, there were things that she would do, but there are things that she weren't. And I think we all have that line. That was determining where her line was. It was just a bit further south than the rest of us.
Mhm.
Larice wants to know how many hours are you working on your writing each day or each week?
Well, that depends on if I'm on deadline. So if I'm not
Mhm.
on deadline, probably not at all. I'm not a write every day kind of girl. I get on deadline and I usually wait and wait and wait until I have to feel like my hair is on fire and I will never finish this book. And then I'm going to sit down and write for like 7 hours because I've left myself no other option. So do not recommend, but it is how every book I say, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing this again. I'm getting ahead of it. I'm not going to wait till the end. And I don't. I wait till the end. But I almost think that's where the magic comes in for me is that feeling of gotta go, gotta go, gotta go.
Mhm.
That do or die.
Yeah,
It's
I
due.
don't know. It works. I guess I should just keep doing it like this. Uh, here with my friend, and I told her, I was like, this is the first time I've done anything in weeks because I feel like I've been, glued to my office chair for the last 3 weeks trying to finish my revision. So,
Were you the same way in college on papers? Was it the last minute?
oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I was always typing. And before, remember, you had to like, I used to take the papers and glue them, to, tape them together, and then
hmm
reel it in and be typing like at the same
hmm
time because those were my
hmm
revisions. And
hmm
everybody would be like, "What's that?" I go, "That's the paper. Don't touch it." Yeah.
Don't touch it. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find though that you might work your best under that pressure because it's like it's urgent, like you have to get it done, or would you rather not have that pressure to
I think the
the
pressure
deadline?
helps me. I think
Mm,
if left to my own devices, I'm gonna just fiddle with it and I'm gonna think about it and I'm gonna write a little bit and I'm gonna change my mind. And it's just gonna we're just gonna float. Um,
right.
the urgency makes me have to make a decision. This is where she's doing. This is what she's gonna do next. This is what she's gonna do after that. Because I don't have time to play around. We have to get to the end. And so to me, the urgency is needed, but probably necessary for me.
Have
Mhm.
you ever turned something in with more than one ending and said, "What do you think?" Or do you
I
usually try?
know, but I no, I turn it in with an ending, but I'm like ending subject to change.
Okay.
This is the ending for now, which is what I just did yesterday.
Maybe, possibly,
Maybe,
not sure.
or it'll stay. Depends on how they react to it.
So, okay, when you're writing, what program do you use to write in? I'm curious about this too.
I write in Scrivener.
Scrivener. When you turn
Mhm.
it in, do you turn it into them in Scrivener as well, or do you convert it to Word?
No, I have to go to Word at that point
Okay. And does it just,
because that's what they don't use Scrivener. So I don't like Word. You talk about it. This next book is 95,000 words. Like that's a beast of a document. And
Mhm.
when you're trying to find something scrolling up and down in a Word document that long, it's just a nightmare. So Scrivener keeps it all the chapters in separate little documents and I can move them and I can look at just one thing and I can put notes off to the side. But at some point I have to go to Word with it because when we go into track changes and things like that, that is the only tool that we all have and use.
So does Scrivener convert very easily to Word like that?
Yes.
You just
So
click
one
and it
button,
goes.
click
Okay.
compile.
Yes, I've heard about Scrivener, but I don't know what it is. And I think our readers might have heard about it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it works. I mean, I'm probably only using about 20% of the things it does. I'm sure that it does a whole lot of other stuff, but that would need a class and a tutorial and things I don't have time for. So yeah,
Okay.
I use the 20% of it that I need.
So I know you talked about this earlier, but Mary jumped in late and she says, I pictured you writing this with a crime board setup, linking the characters and events. I did hear the end of your brown paper on the wall comment, but my question is, how did you imagine Evie keeping everything she needed to straight without leaving incriminating evidence for anyone to see, other than just using a brilliant criminal mind? Did her uncanny ability to compartmentalize help her organize information?
Well, yeah, I think, for Evie, a lot of these past jobs where you're reading it maybe in one sitting, two sittings, three sittings, and you're seeing them back to back to back, if you think of her as a character, if she were a real person, she's got a lot more time in between those jobs. And she's got a lot more time, to think about, how to protect herself and how to switch from one persona to another. So, do I think she's just, a great, criminal mind? Yes, but also you're seeing that the high points, you're seeing the highlights, right? And so in my mind she had the time and space to do those things.
Mhm.
Denise wants to know which authors inspire you.
I get inspired by a lot of different things. I like to read widely. You know while I write contemporary fiction, I still have to set the stage, right? I still have to describe the South to somebody that's maybe never traveled there. So when you read things like, a fantasy book or historical, those authors are so good at setting that scene, especially fantasy, and they're going to create a world that doesn't even exist. I read it with purpose, like, well, how did they make me believe I'm on this planet of blah, 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 doing whatever, whatever. And so, how many pages did it take for me to get in that headspace? And I take that with me back to my contemporary fiction, or and I like to have a love interest, and so you read some romance. A romance writer's so good at the body language, where the physicality of how they touch each other, where's the hand, even if it's just in passing, what is the look, what is the how they speak. And so it's interesting to me to read that and take from that how to handle Ryan and Evie, how do they move in the same space together. And so I get inspired by, I wouldn't say just any author, I get inspired by lots of different genres.
Mhm.
And in that same vein, Callie wants to know, what are you reading now, if anything?
I'm rereading my book for the 5,000th time. I'm not really reading anything right now because I'm on deadline and I have been revising for weeks and weeks, and I don't really like to let anything into that headspace. So
Mhm.
I'm really not reading anything right now. I have a few books off to the side that have been sent to me that they want me to blurb. So I'm going to be getting to that very, very soon. But I'm not really reading anything right now.
Mm.
That
It's
makes sense.
difficult.
Now, I'm sorry, Karen.
I said it's difficult. It's difficult because you have to really
Hmm.
stay in the headspace of what's going on,
Hmm.
especially on a
It is.
deadline.
Hmm.
An anonymous attendee asks, are either of you going to the Tucson Festival of Books in March?
No, there last year though.
I was there
That's a
last year.
great festival. That's a great festival. I was there last year. So I will not be there this year, but it's a good one.
The last time I was there was 2019. I was supposed to be there in 2020. I had 5 panels set up to moderate, and they called it on the Monday before the festival when I was supposed to be leaving on Thursday. And I had COVID by Saturday. So
Oh
I could have just
wow.
been traveling through Houston and
Yeah.
Tucson, affecting the world. So
Yeah, passing it on.
yeah, and they really it went down to the wire. I mean, I was like
Yeah,
really down to
that's
the wire.
amazing.
But it's an
That's
excellent
crazy.
festival if you have an opportunity to
It
go.
is. It's huge. It's so good. It really is.
And you have to go to the food trucks to eat because the food is
Yes.
really good.
Yeah, food is great.
Just got a question from Donna. What is your favorite book of all time?
Ooh.
Oh gosh. Pillars of the Earth
That's such a tough question.
probably is my favorite book of
Mhm.
all time. It's a brick. I mean, what is it? 1,000 pages, 1,100 pages. But I loved the generational aspect of, that whole, if you're not familiar with that book, it is set to what did it take to have this church built in the Middle Ages in England. And, it didn't take one generation, it took more than one generation, and who lived around the church. And it was just, I loved it. I loved
Mhm.
it.
Did you read the sequel? There's a sequel, right?
I did, and I liked it. I didn't love it as much as the
Of
original.
course. My sister said the
Hmm.
same thing. She said the same
Hmm.
thing. So
Hmm. Hmm.
And let's see.
Mama's doing a great job of figuring out all the questions. I will say I saw some question or people were talking about the mean girls in the book. And boy, we've all known mean girls, but boy, did you
Oh,
do
for
mean girls
sure.
well.
For sure. We have all sat across from them or been on a committee with them or been in a group with them or been in a school thing with them. And, what's funny though is, where I live, we'll see people and they're like, oh my God, those girls. I want to be like, yeah, this could be you. But no, yeah.
You're thinking, yes, yes. I
I
love when we
think
sat there, we were talking about you're doing book clubs, and you said, no, can't do book clubs. I have a son who does too many sports. And
Yes.
that's one of the reasons, readers, when you go out to her site, she's got a great discussion guide. She's got links to a bunch of interviews she's done, but between writing and his sports, she doesn't have time. She can't come to your
He
book club.
does. Every flyer that comes home to join any sports, my son's like, I'll try it. And I'm like, we'll go from one to the other to the other. We've done three things in one day before, and it's
Mhm.
just a lot. So
So she's not saying she's not being mean about not going to your book group. She has maternal obligations, you know. Have you
yes.
sat on the side of field and written, like just sat there and
Oh
go,
my
oh,
God. Y'all hear the motorcycle? Sorry. Repeat that.
I said, have you sat on the sidelines and sat there and said, oh, wait, here's an idea. I'm really like, I've got it now in my little
Oh
notes.
yeah, you pull the phone out and write in the notes. Yeah, you got to take you got because you think you're going to be remember all of those things, and it will leave you, pretty quick. So I do have to, if I think it, I do put it in the notes almost immediately.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Tom,
it
anything
will.
else?
I think we'll wrap up the Q&A with this burning question from Joanne, and I'm sure many people also want to know, will there be a sequel with Ryan and Evie?
Not, no, no, not even, no, not at all, not even a little bit. I no, I've moved on. My next book is a standalone as well. I do believe that the TV show, they are hoping for it to be several seasons. From my understanding, is this book will be season one, and they will continuing on. So you could see them, continue on through that medium. But for me, no, I'm done.
And would you read scripts? Do you read everything along the way for the show?
Yeah, I do. I do want to read that. I don't want to write it. I have no aspirations to write a script. That's a different form of writing. I know
Mhm.
what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. So would like to read it because I like to be in the know, but I don't want to write. I don't want to write it.
And you're executive producer, correct? You get one of those EP credits?
Whatever that means. Yes, I am.
Whatever that means, I got my title
Whatever
coming
that
up on the
means.
screen.
Yes.
You want yours to
Yes.
be up. You want yours to be one of those ones that's up that even if you skip intro, your name is still there.
Yes. 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 These are things I have to make sure about. Yes.
We got to get these into your contract. We got to get yeah, we do.
Yes.
Let's put it this way. Well, you're reading, I'm watching a lot of TV. And what I do
Yes.
notice is like written by Taylor Sheridan, directed by, those are the last two things you do, even if you skip intro, you know?
Yes. Yeah. No, I need to make sure I'm on that side of that
Yeah,
for
based
sure.
on the book by, you know?
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
Actually, this is fabulous. Thank you so much for
Thank y'all
joining
for
us. We
having me. I
appreciate
really
it.
appreciate it. These were great questions, everyone. I really appreciate it and taking your time out. And it was
Thank you so
amazing.
much, Ashley.
Well, thank y'all. This was great.
So now you can go back to wine and, flying
You
back and
see, the
jetting back to
sun
the
has
house.
slowly set on me, and I'm like in the dark now. So,
We'll let you go. We're going to wrap
yeah.
up with a few other things for our readers about next time. Thank you. Look forward to
Thank
seeing
you
you
so
soon.
much.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Carol.
much for
Thank
joining
y'all
us.
so much. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Take care.
And to everybody, we thank you for joining us tonight. We noticed a lot of you might be first times joining us. We do this once a month. Let me give you a little bit of scoop of what's going on. Tonight's event is going to be available on YouTube and our podcast soon, probably by Friday, and we will alert you as soon as it's live. We've created an events page on tbrnetwork.com where you can sign up for all of our programs. Our next Bookaccino Live book group program is going to be on February 26th, Wednesday again at 8 p.m. with Lisa Wingate, and we're going to be discussing her historical fiction book, Shelterwood. And we will have an event before that, our February Bookaccino Live book preview event. We do these the second Wednesday of every month, where we preview books coming out the next 4 weeks. And we talk about books coming out 2 months beyond that. And that is going to be on Wednesday, February 12th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If you can't join us, once again, it's recorded and we send out the video to everybody. If you sign up for our newsletters, you'll get every time the videos come out. Book Reporter, if you go to bookreporter.com or Reading Group Guides, sign up. And when the videos are ready, there you can do. Also, you can sign up for our events at the Book Report Network newsletter so you never miss an event. And a reminder that we have done more than 210, I cannot believe this, Book Reporter Talks to author interviews that are available on our YouTube channel, the Book Report Network, or wherever you listen to podcasts. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I know Ashley had a wonderful time. We did too. So we thank you and we look forward to seeing you next time for another event from us. Good night now.